Okay, we are back with part 2 of this week's reading, and we're reading the introduction of Exodus and chapters 1 through 4 this week of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, the Tree of Life version, TLV. So we are going to get started here in chapter 1. And again, as I mentioned, Parashat Shemot is the beginning of the Torah teaching here, starting with where we're going to start here, but it's also going to continue into next week because it will go into chapter 6. And yeah, you're hearing a little bit of interference there. That's my mouse. My USB port is actually not working too well today. Okay, so chapter 1 is oppression in Egypt. Now, these are the names of Benaiah Israel. Benaiah Israel simply means the children of Israel. So now these are the names of the children of Israel who came into Egypt with Jacob, each man with his family. There's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, or Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The souls that came out of the line of Jacob numbered 70 in all, while Joseph was already in Egypt. So the whole 12 tribes are now in Egypt. Well, then Joseph died, as did all his brothers and all that generation. Yet Benaiah, Yisrael, were fruitful, increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew extremely numerous, so the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, "Look at the people of Benaiah Israel are too numerous and too powerful for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or else they will grow even more numerous, so that if war breaks out, they may join our enemies and fight against us and then escape from the land." So they set slave masters over them to afflict them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramses as storage cities for Pharaoh. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and the more they spread. So the Egyptians dreaded the presence of Benaiah Israel. They worked them harshly and made their lives bitter with hard labor, with mortar and brick, doing all sorts of work in the fields. In all their labors, they worked them with cruelty. Moreover, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, Shiphrah, and the other Puah, Puah, and said, "When you help the Hebrew women during childbirth, look at the sex. If it's a son, then kill him. But if it's a daughter, she may live." Yet the midwives feared God, so they did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this? Let the boys live?" The midwives told Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They're like they give birth before the midwife comes to them. They're lively and they give birth before the midwives come to them." So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied, growing very numerous. Because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. But Pharaoh charged all of his people, saying, "You are to cast every son that is born into the river, but let every daughter live." So this is where that began. Chapter 2 is young Moses. Now a man from the house of Levi took a wife, a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and gave birth to a son. Now when she saw that he was delightful, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took a basket of papyrus reeds, coated it with tar and pitch, and put the child inside and laid it inside the reeds by the bark of the Nile. His sister stood off at a distance to see what would happen. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe, while her maidens walked along by the riverside. When she saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her handmaiden to fetch it. When she opened it, she saw the child, a baby boy, crying. She had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Should I go and call a nurse from the Hebrews to nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter told her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. After the boy grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she named him Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. And that's what Moses means. Now it happened in those days after Moses has grown up that he went out to his brothers and saw their burdens. He noticed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. So he looked around, and when he saw that there was nobody, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Then he went out the following day and saw two Hebrew men fighting. So he said to the guilty one, why are you beating your companion? But the man answered, who made you a ruler and judge over us? Are you saying you're going to kill me, just as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses was afraid and thought, for sure the deed has become known. When Pharaoh heard about this, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters who came and drew water. They filled the troughs to water their father's flock. But shepherds came and drove them away. So Moses stood up, helped them, and watered their flock. When they came to Reuel, that's Reuel, their father, he said, how come you have returned so soon today? So they told him, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds. He also drew water for us and watered the flock. Where is he then? He said to his daughters. Why did you leave the man behind? Invite him to have some food to eat. Moses was content to stay on with the man. Later, he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he named him Gershom, saying, I have been an outsider in a foreign land. Now it came about over the course of those many days that the king of Egypt died. Bnei Israel groaned because of their slavery. They cried out, and their cry from slavery went up to God. God heard their sobbing and remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw Bnei Israel, and he was concerned about them. I'm going to pause it right now because I want to refer to some New Testament scriptures that um, show you this as well. And these are in the footnotes. So Acts 7, verse 20. At this time Moses was born extraordinary before God. For 3 months he was nurtured in his father's house. So we had already read about that in Exodus. So it's also mentioned in Acts. And then we're going to go to Hebrews 11:23 says, by faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw he was an extraordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's decree. And then we go to Hebrews 2:5. I'm sorry, I meant Hebrews 11:24-27. By faith Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Instead, he chose to suffer mistreatment along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. He considered the disgrace of Messiah as greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to the reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger, for he persevered as if seeing the one who is invisible. Then we're going to go to the book of Acts and read the footnotes that are referred to there. And we have Acts 7, verse 21. And when he set outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him in. And when he was set outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him in and raised him as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in his words and deeds. When he was approaching 40 years of age, it came into his heart to visit his brothers, Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. When he saw one of them was being treated unjustly, he went to the defense of the oppressed men and avenged him by striking down the Egyptian. He was assuming that his brothers understood that by his hand God was delivering them, but they did not understand. So on the next day he appeared to them as they were fighting. He tried to reconcile them in shalom, in peace, saying, men, you are brothers, why do you wrong one another? But the one doing wrong to his neighbor pushed him away, saying, who appointed you ruler and judge over us? You don't want to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday, do you? At this remark, Moses fled and became an exile in the land of Midian, where he became the father of two sons. And then we go on to read Acts 7:30 to 34. When 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness. We're going to be reading about this in Exodus. In Mount Sinai, in the flame of a burning bush. When Moses saw it, he was amazed at the sight. But when he came up to look, there came the voice of Adonai, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Moses trembled in fear and did not dare to look. But Adonai said to him, take the sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have surely seen the oppression of my people in Egypt, and I have heard their groaning, and I have come down to deliver them. Now come, let me send you to Egypt. So that is the footnotes there, that is referred to at the bottom of the pages in the Messianic Jewish Family Bible. So we're going to continue on and into chapter 3, where the angel of Adonai in a burning bush. That's the title. Now Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro. Now remember, Jethro is also called Ruel. He's called a couple different names, and now we have the second name of his father-in-law is Jethro, the priest of Midian. So he led the flock to the farthest end of the wilderness, coming to the mountain of God, Horeb. Then the angel of Adonai appeared to him in a flame of fire from within a bush. So he looked and saw the bush burning with fire, yet it was not consumed. Moses thought, I will go now and see this great sight. Why is this bush not burnt? When Adonai saw that he turned to look, he called to him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. So he answered, Hineni, meaning here am I. Then he said, come no closer. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then Adonai said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their slave masters, for I know their pains. Now, God knew that that he was hearing the cries of the people and the pain and the emotion and what they were crying out to be delivered. And he's telling Moses this, and he goes on to say, "So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up out of that land into a good and large land, a land flowing with milk and honey, into the place of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Now behold, the cry of Bnei Israel has come to me. Moreover, I have seen the oppression that the Egyptians have inflicted on them. Come now, I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, Bnei Israel, out from Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring Bnei Israel out of Egypt?" So he said, "I will surely be with you. That will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." But Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to Bnei Israel and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' What should I say to them?" God answered Moses, "I am who I am." Then he said, "You are to say to Bnei Israel, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "You are to say to Bnei Israel, 'Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and the name by which I should be remembered from generation to generation. Go now, gather the elders of Israel together, and say to them, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have been paying close attention to you, and have seen what is done to you in Egypt. So I promise I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt, and into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will listen to your voice. So you will go, you along with the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and say to him, Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Now please let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to Adonai, our God, Nevertheless, I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go except by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do in the midst of it. After that, he will let you go. Then I shall grant these people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians. So it will happen that when you go, you will not leave empty handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and ask the woman who lives in her house for silver and gold and clothing. You will put them on your sons and your daughters, so you will plunder the Egyptians. So I am going to pause it here and come back with part 3, and we're going to finish with chapter 4 and then recap